Have you been thinking about getting into new construction, but you're not really sure if you're qualified? Well, in this episode, I'm going to be going over my story, all the different misbeliefs and stories I told myself. This may just be the one thing that clicks for you, that gives you the confidence to say, you know what? This is for me. I need to stop putting all those different stories and misbeliefs in my head, and I just need to get started. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell to notify you every time we drop a new video. Every day I hear so many people telling me why they can't do it, all the different misbeliefs, all the reasons why they can't do it in their area. The list goes on of not only why they can't do it or why they can't do it right now. What if I told you I did the exact same thing for many years that prolonged me for a long time for actually getting started? Had I started earlier, then, where would I be? How would things look? They say, when's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. When's the next best time? Right now. After I hear all these different excuses from all these different people, I break down and show them why this is a misbelief and why you can do it too. Really, if you have the drive, the motivation, and determination, along with the information, you're going to be able to get to exactly where you want to go. So let's jump into my story. So I grew up in Rochester, New York, and every single moment that I had when I was growing up, whether it was, the summers or any kind of holidays, weekends, in the afternoons after school, I would go work with my dad. My dad was a carpenter, and I liked working. I liked earning money, and I liked learning a trade. Now looking back at it, I didn't realize how much that I really was liking the trade. I think then I just liked being busy. And now, I love that I have that knowledge. That's great. Is it necessary? Do you need it to build? No. Does it help me? Yes, in some ways, but at the same time, there was a lot of things that I had to put aside to really, be able to excel in this business. But going back to this, I grew up in Rochester, New York. Summers, vacations, any chance that I got, I'd be working with my dad, learning the trade. My dad, at one point in time in October of '94, decided to move down to North Carolina because there was just a lot of work, a lot more opportunity there. And I was still in high school, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And really a few months later, my stepbrother and I, we were sitting there one day, we're like, what the hell are we going to do with ourselves here? This place is no good for us. The people that were around, just anything. It just wasn't a great place for us. And literally we said, screw it. Let's get up. Let's move down to North Carolina. Let's go to work. Let's learn the trade, learn the business, and, see where we go in life. And so in January '95, that's exactly what we did. We packed a bag, we moved down to North Carolina, and restarted a new life. When I first moved down there, again, I was still in high school. I had a few more months left of high school, so I had to finish my high school years. I had a couple months there. I graduated and immediately went to work. But, after school, weekends, every chance that I got, I was working even while I was finishing up school. So once I graduated from high school, I went full-time into the business. And, I started off, I was working on a crew with my dad. And then at some point in time, I was the crew leader as he started to really build the business and not be on site so much. And then over time, I started running all of the crews. So, a few years later, I think he saw my management skills. He saw that I could pick up on quality and different things like that. And so I ended up starting to manage all of the crews. And at one point in time, I had about 250 guys working under me, 17 crews. I had my own crews. We'll get into that in a minute. I was traveling up down the East Coast, plus I was running all of the crews in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. I remember back in the day, Nextel, I would have two phones. One was for all of the guys, all of the, the actual carpenters, doing the work, the crew leaders and such. And the other one was for all the superintendents for all the builders on the job sites. And it was like I was just going back and forth, that beep 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 Nextel noise, that like you hear that noise now and you cringe, right? I was pretty busy. I was in my early 20s, and I was able to move up and learn how to manage multiple things, and be able to move fast and make quick decisions and problem solve. And I think that's a big part of any type of entrepreneur, is you need to have those skills. Problem solving, it's being able to make quick decisions. I did this all the way up until 2000. In 2000, I ended up leaving my dad to go pursue other things. At the time, like I said, I had my own crews as well. Basically, what I did is I saw a gap in a problem while I was running that side of the business. His company primarily focused on vinyl siding. Like, it wasn't when we were in New York, we would do a lot of siding jobs, but it was a lot of like custom stuff and cedar work and, custom carpentry and additions. And it could have been anything up in New York. In North Carolina, it was just vinyl siding. It grew into some other things over time, little things, nothing really big, but he really focused on the one thing. As Gary Keller says in his book, The One Thing, I haven't read it, read that book, great book. Vinyl siding was his main focus. Like, he was doing well at it. As a matter of fact, he became the largest vinyl siding company, you say in the country, but others said even in the world, because where else are they really pushing vinyl siding? It was a big company at one point in time. Well, there was a big void while I was in that company. And it was when we did all of the apartments, all of the commercial work, all the big stuff. I would have those crews that would go in, and they were large crews, and they would do the work pretty quickly, but they always left so much crap. And so I would have to go in there with my punch guys and spend a bunch of time, and it was aggravating, and fix stuff. And then we had warranty issues all the time. And I just said, you know what? I'm tired of fixing somebody else's mess. I'm going to start up my own company to subcontract from his company and fill that void. And that's exactly what I did. I bought a truck, I got some equipment. I started off with about 10 guys, and we ended up growing that company up to having two different crews of about 30 people each. I had a bunch of trucks and trailers and equipment, and we would, roll up on these job sites, whether it was in Virginia, North Carolina, we were in South Carolina, Georgia, we were all over the place, up and down the East Coast. And we would do these massive projects. Well, that got old at one point in time. I did that for about 3 years. I felt like I was never home. I was running crews in Raleigh, North Carolina, while I was traveling all over the place with these guys running these big projects. Yeah, it paid well. It was great. But at some point in time, I was tired of traveling all over the place. So, my salary from his company wasn't very high. I really never got the feeling that one day I was going to take over the company. And I knew at this point in time that I wanted to pursue bigger things. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to, do much bigger things than running his outside part of his company as a project manager and having my crews. I really wanted to become a home builder, but I always thought, like, you know what? You have to have a ton of money. You have to have, different type of experience. I never even worked for a builder. So, I was in the building industry, carpentry industry, siding industry. I knew those parts of the business, but I didn't know anything about home building. I didn't feel like I had the money, the qualifications. How was I going to become a licensed general contractor? So again, I didn't really feel like I had a future in that company. I ended up leaving to pursue my own stuff. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Well, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what I was going to do right off the bat. I ended up selling a bunch of my crew, my subcontractor crew, to my father, sold trucks and trailers and equipment, and actually gave him the majority of the guys. I think I kept about 5 or 6 guys, kept one truck, a little bit of equipment, and I was doing some subcontracting from different people around, including him, on just single family houses. And, that crew was running. It was a well-oiled machine. So I kept some of my best guys and, paid them really well. And really all I had to do is I had to make sure I paid them, maintenance on the vehicles, if they needed a tool replaced or if they needed something new, or, just any kind of support like that. I would pop into some job sites a couple times a week, just make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And, I was just doing the accounting, and we were getting paid. It wasn't a lot of work on my end. So for the first, couple of weeks, couple of months, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to best fit in? What am I going to do? Well, I want to get in a home building. I don't feel like I'm qualified. Well, in the meantime, well, maybe I can do smaller things that I am more qualified for. Not that I had the knowledge, but I could figure it out. So I got into start doing some home renovations. Don't even remember how I got started with advertising and put myself out there. This is back in early 2000, but I started doing kitchen remodels and bathroom models. And then, I started getting asked to do bigger jobs. And, in the state of North Carolina, as long as it was under 30,000, I think it's even higher now, but at that time, as long as it was under 30,000, I can do the job. I can pull any kind of permits, and there was no problem. I didn't have to be a licensed general contractor. So I would do these smaller jobs, or we'd find these loopholes if it was kind of on a borderline of ways I can do these jobs. So, back then there wasn't a whole lot of resources and ways of finding out information like there is today. Between AI, the internet, YouTube, there's so many different resources, and there's networking groups, and like I don't remember seeing any of that stuff. Yeah, was the internet there? Yes. Was YouTube? I don't even know, but like I didn't really use it. We didn't have smartphones. Maybe I would log onto a computer at home and, get a little bit of information. But I think I used the phone book more than anything, or, just talking to people more than internet. Didn't use it the way we know of it today. That was 25 years ago. Plus, like I said, not a lot of networking groups that I ever heard of. I didn't hear of my first networking group. I think it was 2010 or something like that, the first time I even learned about networking groups. Not to say that they weren't there, I just never heard of them. They weren't really advertised. They weren't really talked about. So I didn't know. I didn't have those resources. I knew where I wanted to be. I didn't think I was actually going to be that person, but it would just kind of like talk about it, almost like, you know what, maybe, if it were for me, I'd love to become a home builder. And so I would have conversations with people all the time and just say, really ultimately, I'd love to be a home builder, but I don't have the money, the qualifications, whatever. And I remember one time I was talking to this one guy saying it, and he's like, what do you mean? So why don't you become a GC? I'm like, again, I don't have the money for that. I can't really build houses. I don't have the qualification. How am I going to become a general contractor? Do you have to go to school for it? I had no clue. And this guy was like, no, you just go to, and kind of pointed me to the direction of where you go. So I looked into it. Instead of going online and checking it out, I actually, looked them up and probably in the phone book, went to the office. I remember where that office was, and going in there and having a conversation and say, hey, what do I need to do to become a licensed general contractor? What kind of qualifications do I have to have? And, there was this process, and I was like, you know what, maybe I can. And so I started pursuing going forward with all of that. Did my application, eventually got approved, went and took my test. Before I did the test, I actually studied. And then I remember going and taking a test. It was a 3-hour long test. I barely finished the test on time. And I think honestly, I was just like trying to rush through, not really even kind of thinking through it, and, pushing buttons just to try to get it finished. And I ended up failing the test. To say I was discouraged is an understatement. I thought at that point, like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to do this. But at the same time, you know what? I was talking to more people, including that person that turned me on to, getting to this point. And they're like, oh, well, there's this thing out there that can help you, study and get prepped and ready to become a GC, taking the test. You should check this out. And I go check it out. I ended up doing all the things that they said you should do. There was like a 2-day kind of class thing. And I ended up taking my test like a week and a half, 2 weeks later. And remember, it's a 3-hour test. I actually finished that test in a little over an hour. And I passed it. And I'm like, hoo-hoo, we're ready to, get going. I can start building. So the next part of my journey was, okay, I'm a licensed general contractor, but, how am I going to get money to build houses? How am I going to find these deals? I'm not qualified. So, I was still doing renovations and such. And a good friend of mine, him and I were talking. We're like, he had a degree from NC State in accounting and business, and he's like, let's start building houses. Let's start doing, buying stuff and flipping houses. And And that's exactly what we did. So we kind of partnered up and I remember the first basically big thing that we did was bought this house, cut the roof off and put a second floor addition on it. And next thing we put a sign out front while we were doing this job. And next thing we know, we were like doing stuff for all kinds of other people, big additions and stuff. Then we started tearing down houses and building new houses. And it was all because that missing part. He had a misconception of not being able to be a builder because he doesn't know how to build, doesn't have those qualifications. And I had the misconception of I didn't have the knowledge and know of business and being able to find money and such. And honestly, this is back in 2003, 2002, 2003, when it was so easy to get money. I had no idea. We would literally go to the bank. Like, I don't even think they ever got my social security number. We'd go in there and we'd sign on these loans and we would buy these houses and tear them down and build houses. It was so easy. Him and I were business partners all the way up until just before the crash of '08. I think it was like 2007. We ended up kind of parting ways. I had different interests. He had different interests. We went a different way. I also at that time had a granite shop, a cabinet shop that was, separate, just me. So I had all those things going on as well. So I really was focusing more on that type of business. And we would do a lot of like kitchen and bath renovations, but it was more like, take out cabinets, put new cabinets, countertops. So it didn't really compete with my partnership business. And so I really focused a lot more on that business. Well, what happens next? 2008 comes and we basically went from, had a ton of work going on, doing all kinds of stuff for builders, a little bit of cabinetry and renovation jobs to nothing, and then not getting paid by builders, and the banks stopped lending. I was really just trying to get things going, and then I was going to start building houses again. The bank stopped lending. I have no clue. Okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get loans. What am I going to do? I'm never going to be able to build again. Not for a long time until maybe the banks start lending again. The truth is, I have not taken one loan out to build a house from a bank since that time. Later, I learned about a coaching program that would teach you how to raise money, how to find deals a certain way. And that was my first eye opener to coaching and somebody helping me and mentorship. Like I had no idea. I never really had a mentor. Yeah, my dad was my mentor per se, but never really like, this is how you do things. Step one, step two, this is how you do business. A lot of it was like, we just kind of jumped out there. He guided along. Yeah, you don't do it like this. You do it like this. It's a better way of doing it. It's a faster way of doing it. But it was like in the moment. There was never any kind of like sit down, step one, step two type of things. So I get into this coaching program, and one of the biggest things I got out of it was raising private money. So instantly I started raising money, went from raising money to building houses, and I'm back in business again. Fast forward today, for many years, all I did was raise private money. And now we have all kinds of other resources and different ways of being able to obtain loans to build these houses. And again, I have not used a traditional bank like the Chase or the Wells Fargos of the world since back in 2007 and previous when I had a business partner prior to that crash. So that coaching program came to me in 2011. You think about this, like pretty much the first 10 years of being in the home building business, I had no direction. Like we were figuring this whole thing out. It was very inefficient. Looking back, the way we did things was terrible compared to how we do things now. So that was my first bit of coaching. It was not coaching on new construction, home building by any means whatsoever. It was more like flipping, wholesaling, raising money, that type of coaching program. Once I started building again, because I learned a lot of things about that, not only that, I was turned on to, read this book, this type of book, these different types of business and self-help books, like really massively changed my mindset and the capabilities of things that I could do as a business person, not as a home builder. That I always had to figure out on my own. I can remember around the 20, maybe 13, 14, 15 time, I was really, seeking, trying to find a mentor in the home building space. And I looked everywhere and I talked to everybody, looked on LinkedIn, looked all throughout Google and different places and talked to people, and nobody knew of one. There was nobody knew of somebody that, yeah, you can hire to learn about home building. So you take, the times and resources back then to what's available today, it's mind blowing. Anything that you want to do, as long as you have the drive and motivation, you can accomplish it. Prior to having a coach, it was like going down a squiggly line road, right? When you have a coach, when you have books, you have a mentor, you have direction, you can go in more of a straight line. How long is it going to take you to go from A to B in a straight line versus a squiggly line up and down hills and everything else? It's going to be massively faster going in a straight line. It's going to cost you a lot less money. You hear people say, oh, I can't afford to get into this coaching program. You can't afford not to get into a coaching program because you're going to pay one way or another, and you're probably going to pay by more time and costly mistakes. So, you know what? The one thing that you can't get back is time. I know for me, I want to excel and I want to get to places as fast as humanly possible and never waste time. So, fast forward to today, all these costly mistakes, all this time I wasted, we have a very efficient, streamlined business that is well documented and has all kinds of training behind it that I decided to start a coaching program. So we have a coaching program on the home building space. And basically, I teach everything that we've implemented in our business over the past 2 decades in our home building business and over 3 decades in the actual construction world. Our business today is pretty dummy proof. If you don't follow a step, if you miss a step, if you take a shortcut on a step, something is going to show you that you obviously have a problem and you need to take a couple steps back and move forward. But then we have all kinds of accountability in place to where you can't really skip any of these steps. Like you're going to be able to, different people on our team, everybody knows what to do and we keep everything moving forward. Now, at first, are you going to have a team? No, because number one, it doesn't matter how much money you have to start up with. I never recommend it. It's always a good idea to go through, do your first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 builds on your own so that you can learn all the different parts and pieces, get the systems and processes set up, and then decide, like, what do you like best? Do you like being out in the field, more of the project management side? Do you like being inside the office where you're doing more purchasing, the deal finding, working with architects and engineers? Like, what do you like best? That's where you want to kind of really hone in on those parts and start hiring out the rest of the stuff. But in the meantime, you should definitely start off doing all the different parts, be the head cook, be the bottle washer, put on the different hats, learn it because it's going to make you a better leader at the end. As you can see, even being in the business, being a carpenter, being a tradesman, already having a business as a subcontractor, I still had a ton of misbeliefs and didn't know how to do a lot of this stuff. And this is 20 something years ago when we didn't have the resources, nothing like what we have today. So I can really relate to a lot of the things that you may be thinking and going through and hesitations that you might have. Again, I'm going to remind you, when's the best time to plant a tree? 100 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. The sooner you get started, the sooner you're going to reach your goals and get to where you want to be. Look, this isn't fast money. This isn't fast turnaround, right? You got to learn this whole thing. You have to become a licensed general contractor. You have to find deals, build a team, find financing, obtain permits, and then build and then sell. Like if you're actively moving forward every single day in some way, shape, or form while doing what you're currently doing to support yourself, you don't need to quit your job. There's a lot of people that when they get started off, they may be working a full-time 9 to 5 job while they're learning and getting the first builds going. And then once they get those going, they start getting paid, then they can leave the 9 to 5 pretty quick because it's a pretty lucrative business. I mean, there's not too many builds that are out there that you can do where you're getting less than $100,000 in net profits at the end of the deal. The sooner you get started, the sooner you're going to get there, because if you're actively pursuing this, it's going to be 12 to 18 months before you get and finish and complete and get paid on your first deal. So I hope this video helped you. Maybe you related to this video and you can understand the fact that, you know what, I wish I had a coach that can teach me the home building from day one. I would be much further along today if I had that, right? I had coaching and other things, and it helped me dramatically, helped me tremendously. So you don't have to worry about that. You have somebody. There's people like myself who've been doing this for 20 something years that have a passion in coaching, that want to show you exactly what we do in our business so that you don't have to go through the time and costly mistakes that I went through. If you have any questions, reach out to us at info@homebuildingbp.com. And please comment below. Let me know some of your thoughts. Let me know if you had breakthroughs, if you can relate to my story. All these things, the comments and such that you're leaving on these videos help me make better videos for you. Help me know more about you as the listener, to know what I can dial in and give back to you. And again, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe, like this video, hit that bell to remind you every time a new video drops. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.